Good morning. Today is Tainus Esther. It's the fast of Esther. We're going to talk about Purim. We have a lot to talk about, but I want to dedicate today's class to the speedy recovery of our beloved Lola. The story of Purim and the story of Esther can't be told without the backdrop of the hatred of the Jew. It's been universal, it's been permanent and deep. The death for the Jews has been desired, has been plotted by the tyrants of just about every age. Pharaoh, Sancherib, Nebuchadnezzar, Antiochus, story of Hanukkah, the Roman, the Turks, the Christians, the Muslims, Stalin, Hitler, almost every great power that ever lived, that ever flourished, defined the Jew as a target for abuse and for complete annihilation. Jews have been expelled from nearly every country in which they resided: England, France, Hungary, Austria, Germany, Italy, Greece, Lithuania, Spain, Portugal, Bohemia, Russia, Poland, the countries of the Middle East, North Africa. I mean, you can have an entire geography lesson just from the countries that we've been expelled from. And of course, from our ancient homeland, the land of Israel. It's estimated that every 22 years, Jews have been exiled from another country. Throughout the centuries, many millions of Jews have been murdered, including millions of infants and children. The Babylonians and the Romans killed 3 million Jews. The Christians and the Muslims, in their crusades, in their inquisitions, in their conversion decrees, blood libels, in their general religious fervor over the span of 15 centuries, slaughtered millions of Jews, wiping off entire communities. The well-known Chmielnicki and his bandits beheaded 300,000 Polish Jews in the year 1648 and 1649. When Hitler put to death a third of our people, including 1.5 million children, in nearly every country, Jews have at some time been subjugated to beatings, to torture, to murder slowly because they're Jewish. That's it. And though many of us have thought that the evil of anti-Semitism perished in a post-Auschwitz world, in the past 16 months, we've been rudely awakened to once again it rearing its ugly face among Arab nations and in Europe and elsewhere as well. October 7th, 1,200 Jews murdered brutally, Jewish children burned alive, Jewish women tied down. The most terrible atrocities, horrific, unspeakable. And so many people here in America and Canada celebrated and continue to celebrate these unspeakable horrors and are blaming Israel now for trying to avoid a second Holocaust, which Hamas would crave to commit. So, I know it sounds depressing when we're just here wanting to learn and grow. But why such a hatred and a fear of a people who never constituted more than a small minority? Why did almost every great culture and civilization see us as their ultimate enemy? Are we such an evil people as to threaten the well-being of virtually every civilization in the past 4,000 years? Why is it that otherwise sophisticated and educated men and women of academia are filled with irrational hatred towards Israel for literally trying to defend its citizens from murder while ignoring the, the horrors perpetrated en masse by its Arab neighbors? Most scholars and historians, including many Jews themselves, choose to view this ongoing obsession not as something uniquely connected to Jews or Judaism, but rather as a multitude of isolated events erupting as a result of distinct circumstances. For example, why do millions of Muslims hate Jews today? Why would the leader of Hamas speak about the need to murder every Jew alive? Because the common explanation goes, we are occupiers occupying their country, and they yearn for liberation. And if Israel would only grant the Arabs independence and hope, the venom would dissipate. But then why did they kill us before the quote unquote occupation of 1967? Why did six Arab countries try to destroy Israel at a time when there were no settlements and no settlers? Because during the War of Independence in 1948, between the newly created State of Israel and its Arab neighbors, hundreds of thousands of Arabs fled their homes and ended up in refugee camps in the West Bank and Gaza. And the Arabs were seeking to return to their homes inside of pre-1967 Israel. But why did they initiate this war against Israel in 1948 and create their own error, the refugee problem? Why did they not accept the United Nations partition of Palestine and accept the reality of the existence of Jews in their ancient homeland? Why were scores of Jews murdered in the 1920s and 1930s? For this, of course, you're going to get explanation after explanation, and the excuses go on and on and on. The attempt removes the notion of anti-Semitism. I've spoken about this before. I think anti-Semitism itself removes the notion of anti-Semitism from anything distinctly Jewish. The Germans, we're told, hated the Jews because they were scapegoats for humiliating the defeat of Germany in World War I and a depressed economy. And so many Christians wanted Jews dead because they claimed we killed their God. Stalin murdered Jews because he believed they were capitalists. Europeans in the Middle Ages were repulsed by the Jew because of his economic situation. I mean, we can go on and on. We don't have to say this. We know all of this. But this approach is unconvincing. To deny that there's a single pervasive cause for Jew hatred and to reject that the underlying reason has sparked the hatred of billions of non-Jews for 4 millennia contradicts both common sense and history. Anti-Semitism, Jewish hatred has existed for too long and in too many cultures to intellectually maintain a claim that each culture hated the Jews because of some distinct factor disconnected from them being Jewish. To believe that Jew hatred is another form of racial or religious bigotry, of ethnic hatred, of lack of tolerance, of xenophobia, of the resentment of affluence, of professional success, is to turn a blind eye to the core cause of this unique loathing. Of course, various factors may exasperate anti-Semitism and cause it to erupt at a given time, but those factors do not explain the origin and the genesis of this hatred. Why, in a book that I recently reread called Why the Jews, the authors Dennis Prager and Joseph Telushkin said this: economic depressions do not account for gas chambers. Why am I saying this today, aside for it's been something that's on our minds for a while? Tonight is Purim, the famous Purim story recorded in the biblical book of Esther, read tonight and tomorrow. It relates an attempt made 2,400 years ago to exterminate the Jewish people, this time by a Persian minister named Memuchan and later Haman. Haman approached the then king of Persia, the book of Esther calls him Achashverosh, and offered him a tremendous sum in exchange for permission to arrange a final solution. He desired that every member of the Jewish nation, men, women, and children, be put to death. At the time, Persia was a superpower, and every single Jew in the world lived under the Persian Empire. This could have been. This wasn't like Europe final solution, Hitler trying to take over. All the Jews of the world lived in the Persian Empire. What does the king respond? The money is given to you, Haman, and the nation of Israel is yours to do with as you see fit. The money is given to you, Haman, and the nation of Israel is yours to do with as you see fit. I mean, this interaction seems quite understandable. Achashverosh, no less a miserable anti-Semite than Haman, happily embraces the idea of a world devoid of Jews. Yet the Talmud feels it necessary to illustrate the situation and employing a parable. So here's the Talmud's parable. The Talmud says that Achashverosh and Haman are compared to two people, one of whom has a mound of dirt in his field, and the other one has a ditch in his field. And the owner of the ditch said to himself, "Oh, how I wish the owner of the mound would give me his mound in exchange for money so I can fill my ditch." And the owner of the mound said to himself, "Oh, how I wish the owner of the ditch would sell me the use of his ditch so that I can remove the mound of dirt from my field and dump it into his ditch." After some time, the Talmud says, these two men encountered one another. And the owner of a ditch said to the owner of the mound, "Sell me your mound." And the owner of the mound responded, "Please take it for free." The Talmudic illustration is clear. Achashverosh is compared to the owner of the mound being a metaphor for the Jewish people who lived under his rule, and he desperately seeks to get rid of them. Haman is seen as the owner of the ditch, eagerly attempting to obtain the mound. And when Haman offers to purchase the mound for money, Achashverosh gladly gives it to him for no payment at all, enthusiastically consenting to the annihilation of the Jews. But here's the question. At least here's my question. Parables that are quoted in Talmudic literature are never meant as entertainment. They're tools to clarify, to crystallize an abstract concept, an abstract idea. But what is so difficult to understand about a story of two people who despise the Jews with similar intensity and eagerly cooperate to destroy them? Why do we need a parable about a mound in a ditch to clarify a situation between Haman and Achashverosh? Is it not like this is the first instance that a king craving to kill the Jews? We know it's happened repeatedly before and after, from Pharaoh to Achashverosh and on. Did the Talmud find it to be strange to require some parable? You have to give a parable to explain such a terrible, terrible thing? And even if it's difficult to understand what transpired between Haman and Achashverosh, how is it explained by the means of a seemingly simple and superficial parable? of a mound and a ditch. And I'm going to even add another component because I think this is important. And you'll see where I'm going with this. The parable doesn't fit the story that it attempts to illustrate. In a parable, the owner of the mound wants to dispose of the mound, while the owner of a ditch wants to obtain the mound to fill it with it. In the actual story, both the owner of the mound, Achashverosh, as well as the owner of the ditch, Haman, wish to dispose of the mound, the Jewish people, to get rid of them completely. So how can you fill a ditch with a mound you want to annihilate? You can tell that I know this story for quite a while and it's bothered me for quite a while. So here's what I think. I've thought about this for a number of years and I've always wanted to tackle it. And I think that this is the right time to tackle it. And I saw a number of really interesting insights on this in my research. What the Talmud is attempting to convey via this parable is an answer to the question of why. Why nearly always and nearly everywhere have Jews been hated? Why did Haman crave to kill every single Jew down to an infant? Why would Achashverosh be so eager to purge his country of all Jews? What have the Jews done to attract such a profound universal animosity? Why are they obsessed with us? From the Russian czars to the Christian popes to the Muslim rulers to the Third Reich, from Voltaire to Wagner, from Martin Luther to Arafat. The greatest and perhaps only common denominator between all of these people was the Jew evoked the profoundest disgust. This is the question. And I think, if I can be so bold, perhaps one of the greatest questions of history. And I think this is the question that this seemingly simple parable in the Talmud is attempting to confront. Anti-Semitism, the Talmud is telling us, sees Jews as a mound. The anti-Semitism harbored by many non-Jews throughout history sees the Jew as a stranger in world history, a foreign creep, a mound that obstructs someone's free movement and enjoyment of his orchard. The Jew somehow irks him, and he's not even sure why. This Jew hater feels uncomfortable with the presence of the Jew. The Jew is a mound to him that doesn't belong here. The Jew may attempt to do everything possible to assuage the annoyance of the anti-Semite, the annoyance the anti-Semite feels towards him. The Jew may try to do everything to eclipse their Jewishness, but it's usually to no avail. As long as the Jew is alive, the Jew will remain, in many a non-Jewish eye, an irritable, cumbersome mound. But why? Why can't they just see us as another ethnic group doing its own thing? This crude bigotry, the Talmud says, is born of a deeper, subtler space within the consciousness of the anti-Semite. Jewish existence opened a ditch, a vacuum in the heart of the human race. And every non-Jew in one way or another is aware of this, causing him to look at the Jew either with admiration and affection or with hate and repulsion, or with the mixture of the two. The Talmud asks, what is the meaning? What is the meaning of the term Mount Sinai? Sinai in Hebrew means hatred. And Sinai is the mountain that gave birth to Jew hatred. This is a direct quote from the Talmud and Shabbat. Some 3,400 years ago, at the foot of a lone mountain, the Jewish people received a gift that transformed their lives and their destiny for eternity, whether religious or secular or assimilated. The moment imbued Jewish life with a unique richness and nobility. The gift of the Torah gave Jewish life tremendous moral and spiritual responsibility. But it simultaneously granted the Jewish mind, the Jewish family, the Jewish community, rich and poor alike, a taste of heaven. The day-to-day life of the Jew became imbued with a depth of meaning, of purpose, a sense of purpose born of an appreciation of the divine presence in life, in love, in family, in pain, in values, in money. And so when this non-Jew encounters the Jew, they are consciously or subconsciously struck by the grandeur of spirit, by the depth of living, a resonance of eternity, an echo of the divine. It's not easily described, but very palpable. There's something about the Jew and Judaism that is larger than life. And this non-Jew feels it. And sometimes more acutely than the Jew. As you know, with my social media presence, I don't look often, but I've looked recently. There's an algorithm that censors a lot of comments from my social media. Thousands of comments have been censored from my social media. If they have certain words in them, automatically it doesn't appear. I'm not going to go so far as to say how many thousands, but many, many thousands. I think probably in the 5 digits at this point. What I'm always fascinated when I look at these is how educated the people are. They're not just like F and Jew comments. They're actually people who are educated Jewishly. They're so infatuated that they actually know more than most Jews. The Jewish presence challenging the world with a call from the infinite moral God opens a hole, a ditch, a mental and emotional void in the heart of humanity, craving the, the fullness, the richness of life that the Torah was given to the Jew. The Jewish people opened a profound wound in civilization, allowing it to experience its own meaninglessness. At Sinai, the Jews redefined their lives by the notion that there is one God who makes moral and ethical demands of all humanity. So at Sinai, the Jewish nation became the target of the hatred of those who could never forgive the Jew for creating the void that grows from a sense of inner guilt. When you're living an empty life, an immoral life, when you hurt your fellow person, or you worship yourself, concepts such as basic human rights, the notion that the sick and the elderly should be cared for, not murdered or left to die. The idea of a society assisting the poor and the disadvantaged are not easily embraced by the barbarian. The concept that we are all responsible to a moral God, that there is a right and wrong, There are limits to power, and that each of us has a duty to righteousness. That idea is toxic to the human animal who cherishes the moral jungle. So the response to this ditch, to this void, and the guilt exposed by the Jewish presence came and still comes in two different forms. Many people from various religions and cultures responded by elevating their lifestyles. I know many people who have elevated their lifestyles to a higher plateau. They saw the Jew and the Jewishness as a model that they could, in their own way, emulate. It's beautiful to see. They assuage the feelings of emptiness, of moral guilt, by creating a life and a value system grounded in the Torah's values. Canada, England, America, these are great examples of that. These are nations that are founded in Judaic ethic, the respecting of liberty, individuality of every human being, formed in the image of God. Most of the founding fathers of the US and so many of its citizens were and they are philo-Semites, cherishing and celebrating the Jew and the Jewishness. John Adams, he wrote, I want to just bring this up here. What a beautiful quote. He said, I will insist that the Hebrews have done more to civilize man than any other nation. He wrote as a Christian, but he added that even if he were an atheist and believed in chance, he said, I should believe that chance had ordered the Jews to preserve and propagate to all mankind the doctrine of supreme, intelligent, wise, almighty, sovereign of the universe, which I believe to be the great essential principle of all morality and consequently of civilization. I found this quote from Tolstoy. You probably have seen it before. He says, the Jew is that sacred being who has brought down from heaven the everlasting fire and has illuminated with it the entire world. The Jew is the religious source, spring, and fountain out of which all of the rest of the peoples have drawn their beliefs and their religions. That's Tolstoy. This path, though, requires extraordinary discipline and sacrifice. Living with the God of the Torah is a burden. People say it's a burden. It demands that we challenge our ego, to challenge our laziness, to challenge our selfishness on a daily basis, requiring us to surrender many instincts, cravings, lusts, natural dispositions. It's rewarding and it's fulfilling, but it's not easy. And most cultures and civilizations in the past opted for an easier and more instinctive method through which to fill the mental and psychological ditch. It's easy. Rid the world of the Jew, and then the void will be gone. It's an easier path, that's for sure, than having to face yourself. People can't cope with the burden of being good. However, when they act in bad ways, they can't cope with the feelings of guilt. They may try, but they can never cut themselves loose from the standards of absolute morality the Torah dictates. And so they're stuck in a catch-22, so to speak. And with that, people turn, and with their mounting frustrations, they turn against the Jews, whom they perceive as personifying humanity's collective conscience. And deep down, they know that the Jew got it right, but it's too difficult to embrace. And this is the soul behind anti-Semitism. It's a form of resentment and hostility directed towards the cause of a profound emptiness in life. Hitler said it. He once said that his mission in life was to destroy the tyrannical God of the Jews and his life-denying Ten Commandments. Those were his words. Rosching had been Hitler's personal confidant, but he actually abandoned Nazism and attempted to alert the free world to the scope and to the danger of the Nazi threat. He once wrote that it's against their own insoluble problem of being human that the dull and base inhumanity are in revolt against anti-Semitism. Nevertheless, Judaism, together with Hellenism and Christianity, is an inalienable component of our Christian Western civilization. The eternal call to Sinai against which humanity again and again rebels. This means that anti-Semitism is not only a Jewish problem, it's a disaster for every moral and decent person as well. Watch how a nation, religion, how a political movement treats its Jews, and you will have an early and deadly accurate picture of that group's intention towards others. Anti-Semites who wish to destroy the perceived embodiment of that higher call to the good, the Jews, but they do not hate the Jews alone. They hate whatever and whoever represents a higher value, a moral challenge. Anti-Semites begin with the Jews, but they never end with the Jews alone. We know that. It is our duty to be students of history. And this we know. Now, a lot of people are not aware of any of this. I mean, these are quotes of Tolstoy and John Adams, not aware of them. I believe it's for the same reason that apples grow in aisle 2. We're just disconnected from our source on so many levels today. And so it's also we choose to be ignorant. We choose to not care. Well, life is busy. It's okay. Life has a lot of things. We have things going on. Not all anti-Semites were aware of the soul of their hatred. Like Achashverosh. Achashverosh means hollow in the head. So we know what is thought of him. That's what it means in Hebrew. Achashverosh, hollow in the head. Achashverosh was only cognizant of the outer component of the Jew hatred. He saw the Jew as a mound that disturbs, that obstructs. They were unaware of the underlying motives behind their hatred. Haman, on the other hand, was very aware. He understood that he despised the Jews because they generated a ditch in the depths of his heart. And that's why the entire Persian elite bowed to Haman daily, excluding one Jewish rabbi, Mordechai. And the book of Esther tells us that Haman was filled with rage. Imagine, thousands of people prostrating themselves before you on a daily basis, except one old, ultra-religious man with a white beard. Big deal. Why is Haman so perturbed by the sight of one obstinate Jew not falling on his knees to worship him? Just let it go. Everyone else did it, even Jews. Because Haman, in a very deep place, knew that Mordechai was right. That Mordechai's behavior resonated in Haman's inner heart. It exposed the truth that Haman was not a demagogue. He approached Achashverosh and said, I have a ditch in my heart, which I cannot bear anymore. I must rid the world of its Jewish presence. And Achashverosh, far less intelligent, far less complex. He says, great. The Jews, for some reason or another, always irked me regardless. I'd be more than happy if you could remove this cursed mound from my presence. History has proven that trying to appease, that trying to bend over backwards to those who hate us is not going to change anything. They're not going to start loving us. The animosity stems from too deep a place to be transformed through money or through appeasement. I love to say that it's true. You know, I would do nothing more than to try to find peace in this world. It's hard for us to accept this. I know. But the real Jew hater is driven by deeply powerful forces. For the Jew hater, the Jew disturbs the core of their existence. We can bend over backward, but it won't change a thing. We can shorten our noses. We can assimilate. We can compromise. Yet as long as we are alive, the anti-Semites will remain restless. And there's nothing we can do or not do to change this fact. It's the anti-Semite that has to change, not us. The proper method, in my opinion, of dealing with Jew hatred in all of its manifestations is not to attempt to eclipse or deny one's Jewishness and the unique role of the Jewish people in history. The human instinctively and actively feels the otherness. That Gentile feels this otherness of the Jew. And the non-Jew innately senses the holiness embedded within the Jewish soul. And when the Jew denies this holiness, when the Jew, embarrassed by his Judaism, tells the world, I am just like you, the non-Jew senses a lie. It's a conspiracy, they say. And the world will forever dislike the Jews who dislike themselves. It's hard to understand it, again, because we're so separated from it. But this has been tried time and again. As a student of history, we've tried this. Majority of the Jews in the times of Hanukkah were assimilated. Majority of the Jews in the times of Purim were assimilated. We've tried this. Do you know what was the most exciting moment for the Jews in the story of Purim? When they were invited to the feast. Oh, we're just like them. And that's when it all started. The Megillah, the story of Esther, starts with this. It's literally the opening story, the 180-day feast, 187-day feast that Achashverosh made. The Jews were so excited. He even served them kosher food. We've tried this over and over and over again. Don't worry, I'm not going to leave you with this stitch in your heart. What can we do? What can we do on Tainus Esther in memory of the beautiful Esther, in memory of the beautiful Shiri Bibas, and Kfir and Ariel, and all of the other incredible women who have given up their lives, who have lived and died so that we can be here? And what do we do about anti-Semitism? We can and must stand guard against it. First, we have to protect ourselves in every way possible. For us here, we have to fight hatred with an unwavering determination, a resolve, a dignity, and a purpose. We have to never duck or show weakness. I'm a visible Jew and I live amongst many non-Jews. People have asked me over the past 16 months many times, why don't you just hide it? Why do you want to be a walking target? Then they win. That's not the answer. We don't show weakness. You know why? It only intoxicates our haters. It makes them think that they may win. That's what's going on with Hamas now. Every time they get a little something, they think they're going to win. We have to never be ashamed of who we are and never be ashamed of what we stand for. It's not our evil triggering the animosity. It's our goodness and our holiness that drives the haters mad. Israel has to declare that the truth that the entire land is an eternal divine gift to the Jewish people that stems way before any politics. The Bible says this hundreds of times. And every attempt to hurt a Jew will be dealt with in the most powerful way. Most importantly, our primary and our eternal hope remains in our relationship with God. That has been our secret and has kept us, our parents, our grandparents, and our great-grandparents going. Again, it's very foreign to us because we are disconnected, because apples grow in aisle 2 in every part of our life. But here's the reality. As long as we're connected with the core of our existence, of our reality, our existence is guaranteed. Trying to eliminate anti-Semitism by appeasing them is going to go nowhere. The hate is simply too deep. We are, as the Midrash puts it, a lamb surrounded by 70 wolves. The lamb ought to be strong, decisive, powerful, and unapologetic. But we always need the protection of our divine creator to deal with these. My aunt likes to tell a story about a little mouse mother who was there with her little mouse children. And all of a sudden, a dog comes roaring, barking at them. And she goes, ruff, ruff, ruff. And the dog looks and turns and runs away. And she turns to her kids and says, it's always good, my kids, to know another language. We are strong. We are decisive. We are powerful. We may be the mice in the face of the dog, but we're unapologetic. And that's why when Mordecai and Queen Esther learned of Haman's decree, the first thing they did was engage in fasting, in prayer, in repentance, in good deeds. That was their response. And only after 3 days of fasting, after 3 days of introspection, did Esther use her position as the beautiful wife of the king to attempt to influence him. In the midst of a drinking party, to obliterate the decree against the Jews. Now, if Esther wished to impress her husband, should she have gone to a beauty parlor, not a fast for 3 days? And I'm going to end today with this. The answer to this question. The Talmud offers a parable of a mound and a ditch. Mordecai and Esther both knew that this hatred was not coming from some misunderstanding or this social malady. They keenly grasped that they were dealing with a mound and a ditch. No bending over backwards will help the crisis. What we need most is the creator of the world who guarantees that as long as we remain connected to the truth, we will live and we will thrive. Esther knew that every Jew knows deep down in their heart that salvation will not come from a man who sees the Jews as an eternal mound. Salvation will come from God. And so, for the first and foremost objective is strengthening her relationship with God. Only afterwards are we called to follow the course of nature, to attempt to influence world leaders to help secure the survival of the Jewish people. Because God wants us to work through the venues of nature. But once we have secured our relationship with God through the Torah, through the mitzvah, through prayer, through fasting, through good deeds, then we can hope that God will manipulate the hearts of the Jew haters to assist rather than destroy the Jews. When the non-Jew encounters the Jew who's proud of who they are, who cherishes and embraces their Jewishness, their unique role in history, more often than not, the non-Jew is overtaken by a sense of admiration and respect. And they can begin to appreciate. And then we can influence. Our job is to be the best versions of ourselves that we can be. And then we can show the world that there could be peace, that there could be morality, that there could be ethics, that they could make the right choice. But we have to start by being certain of that, by being proud and certain and say, this is who I am. I don't bend. I don't change. I'm not scared. I'm proud of who I am. So today, we've done this for 2,400 years, every year. The day before Purim, we've commemorated Esther's 3-day fast. We don't do it 3 days, we do it 1 day. And we fasted the entire day before Purim to remember this unwavering strength of this woman and the Jewish people. And we are here today because of that strength. And we carry that. And then tonight we're going to read her story. And we're going to remember once again the story of Jew hatred and how that changed. V'nehapechu is the words of the Megillah. Everything changed. It was supposed to be one way, but it completely changed. And the person who wanted us hanged, he himself was hanged. This is the story then, and we are students of history. It's the story now. And will continue to be our story because we are part of it. It's not his story or her story. It's our story. We're proud of it. We're strong. And Purim, once again, for us represents two very important things. Number one is first, we will go back to good deeds, to prayer and to fasting. And then we will celebrate. We will celebrate the most beautiful thing in the entire world, that we're proud of who we are. We're proud of our story. We're proud of our past. We're proud of our present. And we are part of the glorious, beautiful future. With that, I wish you a Purim Sameach, a beautiful, happy Purim, an easy fast today. And we should celebrate. We should be able to really, truly celebrate. And on this Purim day, as has happened in past generations, on Purim days, we should hear the most beautiful, amazing news. And we should enter a world of peace, a world of goodness, a world of moral, ethical clarity. And the world should be able to be with us and realize that that's all we want. That's all we wish for. And we should have it on this Purim.